Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Tuesday night Eventide planning session. I am Jason Bulman. I'm the creator of Eventide and a little game called Pathfinder. And tonight, I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the things I got coming up here in the near future, including this week's game sessions. They're, frankly, going to be a little different than some of my previous game sessions because I'm at that point in the campaign where I'm between parts of the story, right? We just wrapped up part 1, and we're about to head into part 2, and that's a perfect time to have a session that's frankly a little lower key. Something that gives us a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a break, allows folks to develop some character attributes and work on some things that they want to work on that aren't just running around doing whatever the adventure demands that they do. So that's what we're going to be doing this week, and I want to talk about that here tonight. Now, of course, that is only happening because part 1 of Wolfren's Fate is now done. It was broken into 2 halves. The first one is the Wizard's Home. The second one is the Dark Laboratory. And both of those PDFs are now available. So if you haven't picked those up, head on over to the Patreon and you can grab them there in posts on Patreon. Of course, you can always go to Minotaur Games /Eventide and you'll be able to find them there as well. Located in the Patreon-only pages under Wolfren's Fate. It's in the GM's Guide. So that is where you will find all of the files you need. I hope you have gone and grabbed those and taken a look. We had an exciting weekend here this past weekend. It was my birthday on Saturday. And in addition to birthday shenanigans, we did take a look at that adventure. We took a kind of in-depth look at the Dark Laboratory, kind of paging through the PDF. And seeing what it had in store for your fortunate players. So that is up there right now. We also did a look at a few new fun things. Like I've started getting some sketches for the next adventure, and I've started to get sketches from the next artist for Wolfren's Fate. So I've got some art sketches from that. And we also got a first look at the Eventide cover. Now, if you missed it, you might be like, well, I'll go back to that other video and watch it. And I'm like, well, you don't have to, because I got it right here, right? And there you go. That is the cover to the player's guide that I had commissioned from William Hallett. I am really excited about it. I think it turned out great. I really love the sun effects and the sunset. I think it kind of perfectly captures the mood and the theme of the campaign. So I'm pretty excited about that. But that wasn't all. We also had a little bit more to show off. We had some sketches from our new artist showing off some items and some monsters from the newest adventure. And let's go ahead and take a look at those. I don't think I laid audio track on the... I don't think. So yeah, here we have the Gaunt. This is a sketch of the Gaunt, a new monster that's going to be appearing in part 2. Here's the Shadow Hunter. That is in part 1, is in the climax of part 1. This is the book and tome that you find from Wolfren down in the laboratory. And this is the thing you are looking for in part 2. This is the Signet Ring. So, oh yeah, I forgot. These just loop right around. So some of those aren't appearing in the current parts of the adventure. Some are a little bit further, but they're so important that I started getting them worked on right now. I do want to stress that those are just sketches. So they're not final. In fact, I've already gotten revisions on some of them that are already quite different. Some of them have already started to move to soft colors, like all in 3 days. This artist is amazing, and I'm super happy to be working with them. Her name is Frost Lamson, out of the Philippines, and does great work. So I'm super excited to see what she comes up with, and the artwork is proceeding apace. Which is really good, because I'd be really happy to get some of this stuff pulled together for release. Maybe even the first part of Wolfren's Fate, maybe even releasing to the general public as a PDF, hopefully in time for Gen Con. That's my goal. See if I can hit it. But it'd be nice to actually have a product out there. And of course, all of you who are at least scholar level will get half price on that PDF, and that'll be the final version. So it'll be edited. I'm going to put in some revisions. I might even add a little bit more content based on the versions that I've given all of you, which are kind of playtest versions. So they will be more refined. They will have the finished art in them. And if you're a scholar level, you'll get those for half price. And if you're Lord or Master or higher, you'll get it for free. So, yeah, the Shadow Hunter, I actually had quite a bit of revision made to that sketch. Because it looks a little too much like slime right now. So I've pushed it and made it look a bit more like smoke and shadow. And the second sketch looks great. So, that is what is going on there. So, things are moving apace on the kind of product creation side of this. And I'm doing it all myself, right? I don't have a graphic designer. I have artists that I'm paying. I'm actually going to be negotiating with my editor here in the next couple days. And I've got a developer signed up now, which I'm going to task on the player's guide. So, yeah, it's... busy times. So we'll see how it all plays out. Now, this week, Thursday, I have a Eventide session. My other playtest session is actually scheduled for Monday, which is a bit of a conflict because it's the 4th of July here in the United States. And although many of us don't really feel like we have a lot to celebrate right now, that still may mean that I move my Monday game to like Wednesday or something, just if folks want to have cookouts or something. So, I'm still trying to figure that out. But in any case, both groups are kind of at this point where they've wrapped up part 1 of Wolfren's Fate, and they're getting ready to start part 2. I've got some exciting developments on that front, because I came up with the overarching thing that ties it all together. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that here at the end. So, between part 1 and part 2, it's kind of the perfect moment, both in the story and from a player perspective, to kind of pause, take a breath, give the players time to reflect, give them a chance to kind of do their own thing, give them time to kind of, just rest, recuperate, learn from what has happened to them, and level up. Because they've all gained a level, right? They've all become second level characters as of the end of part 1. So, I oftentimes like to do this when characters gain a level, especially when the whole group gains a level, is give them a bit of pause, a bit of a moment of respite, to take it easy and learn, train up, get ready, have it all make a bit more sense, other than just, ta-da, the next day we're better. So, to top it off, part 2 itself is designed to go at a slower pace, right? Arguably, the entire events of part 1 took place over 3 days, right? The players met and agreed to go into the tower. The second day they were on the first floor. The third day they were on the second floor, and that's it. They were done, right? So the first part of this adventure took 3 days. So what's going to happen is the intro to the second part is probably going and speaking to the owner of Wolfren's Last, the museum, because ultimately they're looking for one of Wolfren's signet rings, and the most obvious expert to talk to is the owner of the museum dedicated to Wolfren. And this is where a bit of clever story trickery can work in my favor, because when they go and talk to him, he's going to be like, oh yeah, I can dig up that information for you, but it's going to take me a bit. Come back in a week, and I'll have a bunch of information about that. I'll see what I can find, but it's going to take a while, which means the players get a week of downtime, of training, of doing other stuff, right? So first off, obviously I need my players to take care of their leveling. Up to this point, I've allowed the characters to, as long as it was between sessions, they could modify their characters, right? Because first level, I kind of am like, well, it's pretty fungible. You might make a decision that you're not super happy with. Oh, you didn't really like how that thing played out. Let's swap it out for something you want. So at this point in time, all of those things are about to be locked into place. So I've asked all my players to spend some time, go through your character, go through the choices you've made, and finalize those decisions. The next thing I need them to do is start to look at their choices for second level. Now, the thing that's exciting about Pathfinder 2nd edition at second level is you get a class feat. Everyone gets a class feat. Everyone gets a skill feat. Skill feat can be whatever you want, but the class feat really opens up a lot of opportunities. Why? The first time you can take an archetype, right? So, at least reasonably. I mean, there are some weird things you can do at first, but in most cases, second level is the traditional spot where you can take an archetype. So, you know, all of my players need to think about what feat they might take, and if they're just trying to better themselves, they should think about the other player characters and how they've interacted as a group, and whether or not there's anything that the group feels that they are weak on or light on that they might want to bolster with an archetype or by making some other class decisions, right? So part of the second session with these groups is going to be a kind of, you know, chat, a discussion amongst players about what they want to see out of, you know, their next level worth of adventure, right? You know, and how they want to work as a group, because they are clearly functioning as a group now after you know, all the travels and travails in the dungeons underneath Wolfren's tower. They're at least unified in purpose. They may not perhaps be bonded closely as friends just yet, but they are at least unified in a common purpose and working together toward that end. So I want everyone to kind of talk frankly and honestly. This isn't the time to create a secret, you know, goal or agenda for your character. Although if that is something somebody really wanted to do, I could of course accommodate it. But in reality, what I'd really like to see the players do is spend time talking with each other, thinking about their characters, and kind of deciding where they want to go, not just as a individual character, but as a group. But, you know, that said, I'm not actually going to sit down and make them do all the leveling right there at the table. Anything they do during this downtime period is first level downtime, and then at the end, they'll level up. I suppose I might make an exception if somebody's like, hey, I want to pick up alchemy crafting as my skill feat. Oh, okay. Figure that out. So the other thing that I know that they're going to have time to do is downtime. This will be their first opportunity to really spend some time doing downtime. And, you know, to that end, I'm going to provide them with some narrative choices, some things that come from the story, right? So they can return back underneath the tower and start sifting through books that are salvageable and doing repair tasks on books. If they want, that is a thing they could do. They could attempt some research tasks, right? So there may be some questions that they have or some bits of history or knowledge that they want to dig into. That they could set themselves up with as a downtime task. I think we could accommodate that. And of course, there's the obvious things generated by personal character choices. So, you know, they could earn money, they could work a job, they could craft a thing, right? It all depends on what choices they've made up to this point. Oh boy. So I think I've you know, there's that angle of it. And then, you know, so I've asked everyone to come prepared to know what their character would do with some downtime, right? Do they work a job? Are they looking for a place to live? Are they, you know, trying to work a job or make a thing, right? You know, are they trying to retrain a thing? They don't really have to right now, but if they wanted to, they would. You have to excuse me. I didn't get great sleep last night. It was really warm here in Seattle yesterday, and then overnight the temperature just crashed. It went from like 90 some degrees yesterday to today the high was 65. So the temperature plummeted overnight, but it didn't make for a great night. I'm a little tired here today. Sorry about that. So in addition to kind of rote downtime activities that are kind of structured game things, I've also asked each character to come prepared with some bit of personal story they want to explore, right? Maybe it's a facet of their background. Maybe it's a facet of their, you know, their character's story or history or things like that. So I've asked my characters to come prepared with kind of scenes of their own that are like, hey, I want to go visit a relative, or hey, you know, I'm really tired of living above this inn. I want to go find a place to live in. You know, so I'm going to be counting on them to provide some of the content for the storytelling, right? That they as a group together might. God, I'm really tired today. Doing okay. I'm just sleepy. So, I've asked them to come to the game prepared with, what are their characters interested in doing, right? For example, I think I actually have 2 characters, one in each group, who has kind of I don't know how I got to Wormbone. I was involved in a fight, and then I woke up here kind of backstory. And, that's a interesting story. It's a little hard for them to say, oh, and I want this or this to happen. So in some cases, I've looked at their backstories, and I'm going to come prepared with something from their history to talk about, right? But not everyone has given me a full, complete survey yet, right? We did those session 0 surveys, and players are players, so they don't always turn in their homework, and I'm still owed 1 or 2 sheets. So, some of that stuff is stuff I have to gather, and this is another chance for everyone to go through and do the work that they said they were going to do and finalize it. So, we'll see whether or not all that comes together. But that's what the session is going to be. I think at the end of it, I'll probably have them start by having the discussion with the owner of Wolfren's Last, who then gives them the list of places where they might go. Now, that'll be kind of the end of the session. So I don't expect these sessions this coming week, over the next week or so, to frankly be pretty, they're going to be pretty standard, but they're important. I don't think every session of your RPG needs to be a giant action-packed thing with a cliffhanger and a montage and a whole bunch of stuff, right? I think, in fact, the montage is going to be more like the downtime. But I think sometimes having a session that's just a pause, that's just a breath, it's a breath, it's a spacer in your overall plot and story that makes it feel a little bit more real. It gives a bit more texture to it. That you're not just constantly dungeon crawling, adventuring, exploring, right? Sometimes you got to let those things. So, and as a result, it might not take the whole session, and that's okay too. Now, admittedly, on my side, this also buys me a little bit more time to do some of the writing on part 2, because frankly, my development on part 2 has gone in some interesting directions. So, here a few weeks back, we had a chat where I brainstormed. I'm trying to remember which one that was. I think that might have been... Find it. We did a chat a few weeks back in which I talked about... It's called Planning for Part 2. Designing Part 2. Yeah, it was on June 14th, so it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we did a session where I just talked about planning for part 2 and how, the story of it is it's an urban adventure, so it's about going to different places and doing different things, right? And even as we were going through that, I felt like there was something a little missing. There's a location-based portion of it, but it didn't really feel like it had much of a climactic kind of story moment. It didn't quite feel like the whole thing came together quite the way I wanted it to. So, to make it all work, right, one thing that I knew I was going to have happen as part of it was there was going to be a part of it where the adventure is happening at the end of Octran, the month of Octran. And at the end of Octran is Eventide. Now, Eventide is a 3-day celebration that happens outside the months, right? So there are 2 celebrations in the year of Eventide that happen outside of the 4-week months, right? So there's a bunch of 4-week months, and then there's like a 7-day celebration in the spring, and then a 3-day celebration in the fall. So there's, 28-day months plus these extra days floating around. And the Eventide is about to happen. So at the start of part 2, so part 1 happens towards, part 1 of the adventure happens around the middle of Octran. Then once that is over, there's a week of downtime. And then there's several days leading up to the event, to Eventide, the celebration of Eventide, and then Eventide happened. So part 2 is now designed to be kind of a multi-phase adventure where there are locations you can go visit and things you can do. And then at the same time that there's these location-based adventures, there's also time-based occurrences. So while the players are going to adventure and explore these places and try and track down Wolfren's lost ring, there is a parallel story happening at the same time that is related. And what it boils down to is I always knew that the Gaunts were going to come into this in this adventure, and part 2 is kind of the right place for the first Gaunts to appear. So it's going to start out with some bad things happening to the player characters, right? There's going to be some attempts on them, both burglaries and an assassination attempt is going to happen in the early parts of this adventure. They're going to be attacked. Not by Gaunts right away, but by some hench people who are sent to go and attack them. I may make these illusions. I haven't quite designed the encounters yet, but I'm working on it. There is this kind of gathering feeling that somebody, obviously, has it in for the player characters. So that happens pretty early on in part 2. Then when you get to about the middle of part 2, just before Eventide is about to happen, before the Eventide remembrance is about to occur, the players get contacted by a member of the Dawnbringer. And this is where the whole story started to come together. So the Dawnbringers are a secretive group that are studying the Seven Truths. And these Dawnbringers are interested in the players because the players have been in Wolfren's tower. Now, they're interested in this because, and this isn't in the documents you've seen thus far, they're interested in this because Wolfren was one of their members. Wolfren, in fact, helped start the Dawnbringer chapter here in Wormbone. And so they are very interested to get back inside Wolfren's tower. And they know that the players have been in there, so they're interested in talking to the players. So they send the players a missive to meet them and talk to them. At this, they'll be able to meet the head of the Dawnbringers, and they might even learn that there are some members, some people that they've already met who are also members of the Dawnbringer, who have been feeding information to the Dawnbringers about their exploits and what's been going on. So there's like this conspiracy happening of folks interested in, learning what the players know, and then there's these other figures who are interested in ensuring that the players are silenced with what they know. So you've kind of got this pull, this tug of war happening for the player characters in the middle of this story while they're trying to solve this mystery. And that's when this whole story just snapped together kind of perfectly. So they get contacted by the Dawnbringers, and that takes us to the kind of final arc of part 2 of the adventure, which is when Eventide happens. So Eventide is broken up into 3 days. The first one is there to commemorate, so it's a 3-day festival. The first one is kind of like Halloween, in that they are, people dress up as monsters and ghosts and stuff like that, because it is the first day marks the 3 weeks of kind of darkness that overtook the world, right? Then there is the second day, which is called First Light, which is a day of remembrance. It's a day where folks remember those who died during Eventide, although in the 1,000 years since, it's actually just turned into a general day of remembrance. So it's generally used as a day of remembrance for all the people who have died in the past year. And now that I'm thinking about that, the players may be asked to say something about Greyfawn Nimblebrow, because they're the only people who knew him at all before he died. And then the final day of Eventide is a big feast, right? So that's the events of Eventide. But this is also when the Gaunts decide to make their move. So on the first night of Eventide, where everyone's out in costumes, the Gaunts are out in town, not hidden. Because they're weird, right? The first sketch here, its very first one, is a Gaunt. So, they're weird, creepy individuals with odd, distorted features and lanky kind of limbs and fingers with too many knuckles. And so that first night of Eventide, while everyone's out in costume, and I'm going to encourage your player characters to figure out what their costumes are as well. That's going to be part of the adventure. That first night, the Gaunts attack them in the open. And their goal is to capture or kill the PCs. Now, they're obviously going to fail in this regard. However, they are going to capture either, and I'm still kind of working on some of the details here, either some of the members of Grablin's lot, those poor haphazard adventurers who are also going to become friends of the Dawnbringers, even though they're kind of brand new and hapless. Or it'll be one of the leaders of the Dawnbringer. So, somebody gets captured there that first night. So, but it may not be apparent to them that first night. They just survive some attacks. So then we get to the second night, where there's this kind of solemn remembrance happening that evening. We'll get to the solemn festival and ceremony and that sort of stuff, and the ceremony will happen. And in the middle of the ceremony, they will get a message delivered to them that is basically, you need to come here now, or these people will suffer a terrible fate. It's a ransom note, basically. And this leads them into the finale of the adventure, where that night, between the second and the third days, they have to venture down into the sewers, into the lair of the Gaunts, and put an end to them once and for all. So that is how part 2 is going to work out. And it's all of these days and events are also timed out in such a way that the player characters should be exploring the locations and learning about where the ring is throughout all this, and should put it all together right toward the end, so that basically the conclusion of the event-based storyline and the conclusion of the location-based storyline kind of line up. At least that's the intent. If it doesn't quite line up, that's okay too. If the players need a few more days to figure out the mystery part of it, no problem there as well. But, and you can also stall for time if they start solving the location-based thing too early, right? A key NPC is out in the country, right? And you can't talk to them for a day, right? And just to stretch it a bit. There'll be tools in there to help make that work. So, yeah, there'll be a sewer map, obviously, and there'll be a city map. The city map is one of the big things I'm working on. So, once you're done dealing with the Gaunts, you can come back up to the surface, and it'll be the next day, and it'll be the final day where everyone's preparing a big celebration, and you can, of course, take the celebration, and you can also partake in the final celebration of the last day of Eventide and celebrate your victory over the Gaunts. And at that point in time, you might think you're all in the clear and able to go further. But I think I will leave them with some lingering hint that this threat is far from over. So that is kind of the outlay. So I've got kind of a small, quiet session planned for the next 2 weeks. Then 2 weeks after that, we launch into the main thrust of things. So, all things considered, I have 2 weeks and a handful of days, 2 weeks and 2 days to get the first bits of this adventure into rough shape. So I'm going to be busy, but I think we can make it. So I'm excited to get that going. Will there be sewer tiles for blue maps? Yeah, I suppose I'm going to have to make some. I hadn't really thought about that. I don't have sewer tiles. That's true. That's a good point. Maybe I'll put together a quick sewer tile map pack. Oh boy. I'm going to have to add that to my... sewer tiles. Gonna need to make those. That's a good... Thank you, chat. You reminded me of a thing that I now need to do. Where's my Eventide general note? Sewer tiles. I've got kind of sticky notes that sit on my desktop that I can Down that way, I don't forget it. All right. So, that, I think, about covers all the content I had for today. I knew this was going to be a little light. No worries. The extra work comes with the job, as it were. So if folks have any questions or anything, I'll be happy to answer them here. We can kind of have some general chat. I don't know. I got about 15 minutes or so here before I want to get ready for tonight's Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous stream. So I don't know if folks have questions. I'm here for it. If we go a little light here today, there's nothing wrong with that either, I suppose. Yeah, downtime, I actually think a downtime session doesn't feel very exciting, but it does give pause to moments in the story and allow them to breathe and things. So I think they're important. You know, it's not always super critical, but yeah, you don't want to have them too much, otherwise it feels like the game just. Do I have any ideas for setting specific archetypes? Yes. I do. I'm not sure any of them are quite applicable at this stage. I know that there's an archetype that you can be forced to take based on what happens to you. There's an archetype that you can be forced to take if you're raised from the dead and it goes kind of wrong. And then you are forced to take that archetype. The upside is just you get the dedication for free, but it comes with drawbacks. Yeah, it was a few weeks ago. Talked about that one. You know, have there been any Destiny interactions? You know what? I actually think that my player characters have been so focused on learning their characters that most of them have not done much with Destiny. And as first level, that's not a big deal. But I think as we kind of go forward and as their personal stories become more manifest and as their backgrounds become a bit more manifest, I think tying that into their Destiny is going to be critical. I was trying to say both words at the same time. Critical. Yeah, no, so I don't actually think we've played with it much at all. I know that one character has the Destiny that gives him 2 hero points at the start of each session, but he doesn't really have anything he can do with it other than burn it for rerolls, which he's been doing quite a bit. But everybody else has been pretty quiet with theirs up to this point. And I think, frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if a bunch of people have forgotten about it. It happens. You know, that's always a good point that, you know, they should be thinking about that, and it should be a subtle reminder. The Destiny abilities are not supposed to be things that you use all the time. They're meant to be things that you use, you know, when it's really, you know, key to your character concept. Which, frankly, you know, their character concepts are a little nebulous so far. So it doesn't surprise me that it hasn't really come up. But I think it will, and, you know, that's just tends to be how things work. So yeah, there is that. What else? What else is going on right now? Yeah, art, art, layout, edit. It's all coming along, right? I mean, I think that's the, you know, one of the challenges of a project like this is that it's just, you know, me and my spare time, which I have some of, and then, you know, birthdays and heat waves happen and I get nothing done. Like, I'll be honest, I've gotten 0 done in the past 2 days. Just because it's been 90 degrees here, and being in this office with its west-facing window was a non-starter. Are any of the characters looking around town for rumors? No, not yet. Right? So most of them have just learned, or are just about to learn. Like, the Thursday group hasn't even technically gotten the message yet that they need to go find the ring. Right? They're right about to. But they haven't quite gotten it yet. Both groups, you know, dealt with the Shadow Hunter, and in one group, that's where the game ended. And with the other group, they had enough time to explore, get the note, and get to the end. So the Thursday group that's coming up here has to technically finish part 1, but there's no fights left. It's just a little bit of exploration and cataloging. So we'll do that. Then we'll go into downtime stuff. We'll do the leveling stuff. And then we'll start the intro stuff for part 2, but that's it, right? You know, so that should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, I am hoping that I can release the first adventure in time for Gen Con. Not that it's going to be in print or anything at Gen Con, because honestly, folks, I'm not going to be at Gen Con. I had the opportunity to volunteer to go, but I just don't really feel comfortable getting on a plane and going to a convention with 30,000 people in the middle of a COVID wave. So I won't be at Gen Con, but I will be here. I'm looking forward to doing something fun for Eventide over Gen Con, but I haven't quite decided what yet. I might try and do a public play session or something like that. I don't know. I haven't really contacted anyone yet or started any of the work for it. And I don't feel like it's quite too late yet, but boy, days are burning away here. We're almost into July. So I'm going to have to figure that out pretty soon. But, if everything goes according to plan for the adventure, I mean, I basically just need to do some stitching of parts 1 and 2 together, do some rewrites of a bunch of things that I noticed were problematic or weren't quite working the right way. Give it to an editor, get those back, send it back through a layout process, and attach some finished art to it, and I'm pretty much done. So, but I need to get some of that finished art in, and therein lies the tricky part. So, I'm working with an artist, I'm working with an editor, and we'll see how quickly it goes. So if all things go according to plan, maybe we launch right near Gen Con. If not, if it happens right after Gen Con, that's not the end of the world either. I guess I'm trying to decide whether or not getting an adventure PDF up before Gen Con matters at all, right? I guess I'm a little worried that folks go to Gen Con and spend all their money and then don't have any left for me, for my little PDFs. But we'll figure it out. I had to talk to folks. I talked to folks last week about the pricing on it. And that's just some sobering stuff. I mean, when you take into account art and layout and edit and my time and writing time and stuff like that, kind of hard to see a way where I don't end up charging like $15 for a PDF. A 32-page PDF feels expensive to me. But I don't know what else to do. Right, maybe I luck out and it sells gangbusters, and then I've made a ton of money. But I'm just gonna end up putting it all back into the project anyway. So, it's one of those things where right now I'm not looking. I have a day job; it pays me well. So all the money that I'm getting from this is just kind of getting put back into it, which kind of is what you almost have to do to get these things off the ground, because they're frankly very expensive. Building an IP is a lot of money, and that's something I'm still kind of working to figure out, right? How that is all going to work out. So, yeah. This is Halloween. I'm not sure I follow. Yeah, I mean, I get it, right? If they can afford to go to Gen Con, a PDF isn't that big of a deal. Pricing on a PDF is tricky, though, right? I mean, if the most I've sold of a PDF is about 300 copies, right? And, that's a PDF that's been out for 10 years. Now, it had lower production values and, was old content. It really wasn't anything too exciting. So, 300 copies still feels like, still feels tricky. But I don't know. So a lot of my numbers are based on that, right? Even if I sold 500 copies, it still seems to recoup my costs and not lose my shirt. I got to charge like at least $10. I don't know. Maybe I'll go $9.99. See whether or not fate favors the bold. I don't know. You never can tell with these things. I don't know. You can take a guess, and that's it. You have to see how the market responds. And doing a PDF is always kind of a gamble anyway. So, anyway, that's what I got here tonight, folks. I don't see too many more questions, so I'll probably just call it here. Give myself a few extra minutes to set up for the next stream. Sorry this was a bit shorter here today. We're just, just like my game sessions this week. It's a bit of downtime, bit of a period in between. I am excited about, getting into the meat of part 2. I've got, That is an impressive costume. Yeah, well, I'm hoping that the Halloween aspect of it's kind of fun. That might be entertaining. For part 2, I think that is kind of a fun part. Letting the characters play dress up could be fun. So, but we'll see how that goes. All right, folks. So I've got the Twitch stream here starting in about 20 minutes. It'll actually kick off in here in about 15 and then go live in about 20. So I think we will go ahead and call it here a little early today. Give ourselves a little bit more time to get ready for the next stream. And folks, I want to thank you for stopping by and watching here tonight. Our next stream will be a week from today, and we'll talk about some character options and see how that went, and really start digging into the meat of some of the stuff for part 2, because I'm hoping that by then I should have some of it generated. So thank you for coming by and hanging out here tonight, folks. We'll keep this one nice, short, and sweet, and we'll see many of you over at the Twitch stream here in a bit. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.